My name is Dave Mahler, um, Ground Zero Recovery Coaching. First, I want to thank Long Branch, the mayor, Susan, everybody who participated. It takes a lot to put this together, like she said. We just watched a really emotional video filled with faces of people who lost their lives, to overdose, to fentanyl poisoning. I want to remember something as we look at those faces. They're not just numbers. There's somebody's daughter, there's somebody's son, brother, sister, father, friend. One of those faces you saw was my own daughter, Dana. Today's a little emotional. Today would have been Dana's birthday. So when I got asked to speak, Susan said, "Hey, would you like to take the mic?" I said, "Sure, I'd like to speak." I didn't know how it was going to be. But, it's about my daughter and about everybody else, all those people. And I know Dana's story by heart. See, Dana made a choice on the day that I lost her. She made a choice to go out and buy a drug on the street. But they didn't make a choice to buy something laced with fentanyl. She didn't know there was fentanyl in what she bought. And she certainly didn't choose to die that day. So many times we hear, oh, they died of an overdose, but they really died of poisoning. And that distinction matters to me and to many others. We're living in a time when buying a drug on the street is completely different than it was many years ago. Illegally manufactured fentanyl has changed the equation. A person can buy something on the street thinking they know what they're getting, but they actually have no idea what's in the drug they're taking. Sometimes I explain it as something called the chocolate chip effect. The chocolate isn't perfectly distributed throughout that cookie. One bite may have several pieces. Another bite may have none. Now imagine something far more dangerous when an illegally manufactured drug could have fentanyl all over it. Say two young people go out, they share some drugs, and one dies and the other one doesn't. And parents are wondering what happened. And that's what the chocolate chip effect is. You don't know where the fentanyl is going to be. That's the world that our children, our grandchildren, and our communities are facing. And sometimes we become numb to the numbers. I'll go back to 2024. 80,000 Americans died from a drug overdose. Tens of thousands, maybe 70% of them, died from fentanyl poisoning. Try picturing 80,000 people. It's enough to fill a major football stadium. Now imagine walking into the stadium and looking at every seat. Every seat represents a person, a name, a family, and a story. And somewhere in that stadium is my Dana. That's why events like this matter. People matter. We can't discount it. Now, how do we educate the people before they ever make that first decision? How do we make Narcan more available? How do we make sure people understand the dangers of counterfeit pills and drugs that could be contaminated with fentanyl? Their family is standing where my family may once stood when this happens. How do we remove enough of that stigma that someone who's struggling can say, hey, I need help, before it's too late? Before awareness, because awareness without action just isn't enough. The fact that overdose deaths recently declined, okay, it's encouraging, but it's still 80,000 people. It's not really a victory. Not while families are still receiving that phone call. Not while parents are still burying their children. I know that firsthand. Another family getting that phone call, sharing that grief I have, a parent joining that club that they never wanted to join. There's a lot of us out there. I can't bring Dana back. I wish I really could. but I could say her name, Dana. And I can try to help the next Dana. I can tell her story. And today on her birthday, I can stand here and make sure that her life and what happened to her means something. And every family that was represented in that video that we just watched, they mean something. And we can love them. So today we remember the people that we've lost, but we need to do more. We need to remember how we lost them. Let's remember how they lived, how they laughed. Remember their smile. Remember all the things they loved. Remember the people they loved. And let's honor them by doing everything that we can do to prevent another empty chair at the dinner table, another photograph on that video, another parent having to stand up here at this microphone telling a story like I am. Dana was my daughter. She was so loved. She mattered. She still matters. Otherwise, I wouldn't be going around the country as a recovery coach. But as long as I have a voice, I will continue to use it for her and the rest of the people on that video. That anybody that experienced that kind of loss. Thank you for remembering Dana with me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan.